My tough love apparently cost me my relationship, and I don't think it's fair. So, am I the asshole here? I'm genuinely asking, because my boyfriend, Dorian, just detonated our 3-year relationship, and I'm left sitting in the wreckage of our apartment trying to figure out what the hell just happened. All because I tried to help his best friend. For 3 years, Dorian and I were that couple. You know the one, the power couple. I'm a senior consultant at a top firm. I solve complex problems for a living. He's a physical therapist with his own thriving practice. We were solid, ambitious, the ones our friends looked up to. We had plans, a down payment on a house, the whole 9 yards. Then about 2 months ago, his best friend, Samuel, got diagnosed with depression. Look, I get it, life gets tough. His tech startup failed, he had a messy breakup, whatever. But the way everyone started treating him was just pathetic. It was like he was made of glass. Everyone was walking on eggshells, speaking in these hushed, reverent tones. Dorian was spending hours on the phone with him, just listening to him wallow in this thick fog of self-pity. Honestly, it was getting unmanly. In my world, you don't get ahead by collapsing. You get ahead by getting tough. I just thought Samuel needed a dose of reality, not a pity party. Apparently, that makes me a monster. My solution was what I called a motivational intervention, a sort of tough love campaign. In my line of work, we call it a disruptive strategy. I optimize failing systems for a living, and from where I was sitting, Samuel's emotional state was a system in catastrophic failure, running on a feedback loop of pity and inaction. You don't fix a system like that by placating it. You shock it into a new paradigm. While Dorian was playing the role of the emotional sponge, passively absorbing hours of circular, unproductive whining over the phone, I decided to take a more proactive, strategic approach. He was essentially holding Samuel's head underwater while telling him he was a good swimmer. It was madness. So, I started using my social media. My online brand is built on this no-nonsense, high-performance thinking. It's what my clients pay me for. I even created a whole series, Tough Truth Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, I drop some hard-hitting reality check for my followers, and my engagement went through the roof. The likes, the 100% comments, the DMs from other professionals saying, "Thank you, I needed to hear this." It was a feedback loop of validation. It proved my methods resonated with other winners. I never used Samuel's name, ever, but my posts were surgical. I was using the information Dorian gave me in worried confidence as raw data for my social experiment. When Dorian mentioned Samuel was feeling too drained to even get out of bed, I posted a gym selfie at 6 a.m., glistening with sweat. The caption, "You can't think your way out of a bad mood, but you can sweat it out. Stop philosophizing, start moving." When Dorian told me Samuel felt isolated and was rewatching old comfort movies, I posted an Instagram story showing a sleek, futuristic cityscape. The text read, "Stop looking in the rearview mirror. The past is a place of reference, not a place of residence." I added a poll, building a future versus reliving old glories. Twitter was even better for these little surgical strikes. My tweets were sharp, concise, and utterly deniable. One that went semi-viral was, "Using your diagnosis as a personality trait isn't strength. It's a marketing campaign for your own mediocrity." Another was, "Funny how setting boundaries for some people just means getting a free pass to be a flake." And my personal favorite, "The expectation that your friends should be your unpaid therapists is the peak of emotional entitlement." Each tweet felt like launching a perfectly calibrated missile. Every time I hit post, I felt a clean, sterile feeling of control, a jolt of righteousness. I was the only adult in a room full of children, the only one brave enough to say what everyone was secretly thinking. I was administering the bitter medicine he needed, but was too weak to ask for. And the best part, the plausible deniability. It was a masterclass in indirect communication, a flawless strategy. I never tagged him. I never used his name. If confronted, I could just say, "What? This is a general commentary on modern victimhood culture. Are you projecting?" I felt powerful, in control. I wasn't just helping Samuel, I was demonstrating the superiority of my worldview. It wasn't cruel. It was efficient. It was necessary. I was the architect of his potential recovery, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Of course, Dorian noticed. He's not an idiot. A few weeks into my Tough Truth Tuesdays, he brought it up, but in his typical, gentle, conflict-avoidant way. We were making dinner, and he was chopping vegetables while I scrolled through my phone, probably looking for my next nugget of motivational gold. "Hey, Ash," he started, not looking at me. "Some of your recent posts, they're pretty intense." I didn't even look up. Intense is how you get results, babe. You don't close a seven-figure deal by being gentle. Right, but this isn't a business deal. It's about a person, he said, his knife slowing down. That one about emotional entitlement. It just felt a little close to home, you know, with Samuel and everything. This was my chance to shut it down. I put on my most reasonable, patient voice, the one I use on difficult clients. "Dorian, my content is for a broad audience of professionals. If Samuel sees himself in a critique of unprofessional behavior, maybe that's a sign he needs to reflect, not a sign that I'm targeting him." I even gave him a little smile. "I'm helping you. This is how you create leverage to get your friend back." He sighed, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Not anger, but a deep, weary sadness. "It's just, I had a friend in high school," he said quietly, his voice dropping. "He was going through a really dark time, and everyone just told him to man up and get over it. He tried to. He almost didn't make it. The doctors said the feeling of being judged, of not being heard, was the thing that pushed him over the edge. So for me, this stuff it's a red line, Ash. It's the one thing I can't mess around with. I should have stopped. I know that now. A normal person would have heard that and understood. But my cognitively arrogant brain just processed it as more data. See, I thought, his past trauma is making him soft. He's emotionally compromised. So instead of hearing a warning, I heard a confirmation that my objective, detached approach was even more necessary. "I hear you," I said, my tone dripping with condescending empathy. "And I'm sorry that happened, but that's exactly why Samuel needs a different approach. The soft way failed your friend. Let's not let it fail Samuel too." He just looked at me, his eyes wide with a sort of disbelief. He didn't argue. He just went back to chopping his vegetables, but the silence in the kitchen was suddenly deafening. I thought I had won the argument. I had no idea I had just trampled all over his most sacred boundary. The final nail in the coffin was a tweet. It was so simple, so detached, just 140 characters of pure, unadulterated arrogance. I'd just landed a huge new client, a multi-million-dollar account I'd been chasing for months. I was high on the win, buzzing with that electric feeling of being untouchable, of being right about everything. That evening, Dorian had gone out for a drink with a few friends, a mental health check-in, as he'd called it, because Samuel had had another bad day and wasn't answering his phone. I was at home, basking in my success, pouring a glass of expensive wine, and I scrolled onto Twitter. I don't even know what prompted it, just a general feeling of contempt for weakness, for the kind of emotional inertia that I had just professionally conquered. I typed, "Some people use depression as a get-out-of-jail-free card for responsibility. Wake up. The world doesn't stop spinning just because you're sad." I hit send and thought nothing of it. It was just another tough truth, another piece of content for my brand. Dorian came home a few hours later. The sound of his key in the lock was different, slower, heavier. There was no greeting, no "hey, I'm home." The air around him was cold, still. He walked into the living room where I was, wine in hand, and just stood there, his face completely unreadable. Then he held out his phone. He didn't say a word. On the screen was a text chain. At the top was a screenshot of my tweet. It had been sent to Samuel by his cousin. Below it, a single, heartbreakingly simple message from Samuel to Dorian. "Is this about me, D?" My blood ran cold. The usual defenses, the clever arguments, they all lined up in my head, ready to be deployed. "It's a general statement. You're being too sensitive. It's not my fault his cousin is a drama queen." But before I could get a word out, Dorian spoke, and his voice was terrifyingly calm. It was a voice I had never heard before, stripped of all warmth, all affection. It was the voice of a surgeon announcing a time of death. "I told you," he said, his eyes locking onto mine. They weren't angry. They were just empty, devoid of light. I told you what my red line was. I told you about my friend in high school. I laid my single most important boundary, the most painful part of my past, at your feet, and you didn't just cross it, Astrid. You built a fucking circus on top of it. He took a slow breath, the kind you take before you lift something impossibly heavy. You used my vulnerability, my trust in you, as ammunition. You took my best friend, in the lowest, most fragile moment of his life, and you turned him into a prop for your narcissistic social media performance. All to prove you were smarter, to prove you were stronger. He shook his head, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement of finality. I cannot be with someone who lacks such a fundamental level of human empathy. I cannot build a life with someone whose first instinct is not compassion, but cruelty disguised as logic. And that was it. No shouting match, no dramatic breakdown. Just that quiet, devastating verdict. He turned and walked into our bedroom. I heard the closet door open, the slide of hangers on the metal rod. He was packing a bag, and I just stood there, my brilliant, strategic brain completely short-circuiting, unable to process a problem it couldn't talk its way out of. The wine glass suddenly felt heavy in my hand. The moment the front door clicked shut, the silence he left behind became a physical presence. It was a high-pitched ringing in my ears, a suffocating pressure in the air. For about 10 minutes, I just stood there, expecting the sound of his key back in the lock. He had to come back. We had a dinner reservation for Saturday. We had non-refundable flights to Italy for September. You don't just throw 3 years of shared memories and future plans away over a single tweet. It was illogical, inefficient. Then the cold reality began to seep in, and with it came a hot, acidic wave of panic. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I dialed his number. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. His voice, so calm and familiar, filled the silent room. "Hey, you've reached Dorian, leave a message." I called again. Voicemail. I sent a barrage of texts, each one more frantic than the last. "Dorian, this is insane. Pick up the phone. We are not solving this with silence. You're completely overreacting." It was a tweet. It wasn't about him, not really. Okay, I'm sorry if the tweet was too much, but leaving like this is childish and manipulative. Are you seriously doing this? After everything I've done for us, for our future. Delivered, delivered, delivered. Not read. The single gray checkmark on WhatsApp was a tiny digital middle finger. I switched to Instagram to DM him, my mind racing. I'd send him a picture of us from our last vacation, remind him of the good times. I typed his name into the search bar. User not found. My heart hammered against my ribs. A cold sweat broke out on my neck. I tried Facebook. Same thing, he had blocked me, everywhere. In the span of 30 minutes, he had systematically, efficiently, and silently excised me from his digital life. It was a cold, clean cut. The kind of decisive action I usually admired. My panic quickly curdled into a hot, defensive rage. How dare he? How dare he be the one to pass judgment on me? This wasn't about his precious, fragile friend. This was about control. He couldn't handle that I had a stronger mindset, a more resilient worldview. He was punishing me for not being as soft and sentimental as he was. "It's Samuel's fault," I said out loud, the sound of my own voice startling me in the empty apartment. "He's a black hole of neediness, and he's sucked Dorian in. He's probably thrilled about this." I paced the living room, my own arguments echoing in my head, building a fortress of indignation around me. He was the one who was rigid, overly principled, incapable of seeing the bigger picture. I was just trying to help. My methods might have been unconventional, but my intentions were pure. He was the one who abandoned our relationship at the first sign of a real-world philosophical disagreement. I was the one who was left behind. The narrative was clear in my head. I was the victim here, blindsided by his emotional fragility. I clung to that anger like a life raft because the alternative, the crushing, suffocating weight of what I had actually done, was too terrifying to contemplate. A few days later, running on nothing but caffeine and pure indignation, I called Priya. She was our closest mutual friend, the one who had set us up on our first date. If anyone could talk some sense into Dorian, it was her. I launched into my well-rehearsed monologue the second she picked up the phone, painting a picture of myself as the heartbroken, confused victim of Dorian's sudden, inexplicable coldness. And he just left Priya, not a single word since, blocked me on everything, all because I made some general comments online about resilience. It's insane, right? He's being so incredibly unfair. I finished, expecting a wave of sympathetic agreement, but the line was silent. For a long, uncomfortable moment, all I heard was static. I thought the call might have dropped. "Priya, are you there?" "I'm here," she finally said, her voice flat and distant. "Astrid, this isn't sudden, and it wasn't inexplicable." I bristled. What's that supposed to mean? There was a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. "He called me last week, you know, and a few of the other guys. He was really struggling. He didn't know how to talk to you about it." She paused, and I could hear her choosing her words carefully. He said, "I love Astrid, but her superiority complex is starting to feel like a form of cruelty. I'm terrified that one day she's going to turn that cruelty on the people I care about most." "It sounds like," she added, her voice softening with a hint of pity. His fear came true. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. Cruelty, he had used that word. He hadn't seen my actions as strategic or helpful or even just misguided. He saw them as cruel, and he had been anticipating it. This wasn't a sudden snap. It was the final, predicted outcome of a pattern he had already identified. Priya's words didn't offer the validation I craved. They held up a mirror to a version of myself I didn't want to see. For the first time since he'd walked out, a crack appeared in my fortress of anger, and a terrifying, icy feeling of actual regret began to seep in. It's been 3 weeks. The anger still comes in waves, hot and familiar, a comforting shield. I spent last Friday night out with a group of girlfriends from work, downing gin and tonics and letting them feed my narrative. "Honestly, you dodged a bullet," one of them said, clinking her glass against mine. "Totally," I slurred, forcing a wide, brittle smile. "I don't need a saint who abandons his girlfriend for a sad friend. Give me the sinner every time. To the next, better man." We all cheered, and for a moment, surrounded by the noise and the laughter, I almost believed it. I felt strong, defiant, the wronged woman who was already bouncing back. I was the architect of my own life, and Dorian was just a poorly executed project I had wisely decided to scrap. But the performance always ends. Later that night, on the quiet Uber ride home, the alcohol started to wear off, replaced by the familiar hollow ache. I found myself doing the thing I swore I wouldn't. My thumb, moving with a mind of its own, opened Instagram. I typed Priya's name into the search bar. Her profile was public. I scrolled through her recent stories, my heart pounding a sick, slow rhythm. And there it was. A group photo from a barbecue 2 days ago. Priya, a few other friends, and him, Dorian. He was standing in the back, a beer in his hand, a small, genuine smile on his face. He looked lighter. He looked free. I couldn't breathe. I clicked on his tagged profile. Of course, it was still blocked. "User not found." The same cold digital wall. I closed the app, leaned my head against the cool glass of the car window, and the city lights blurred into streaks of painful, mocking color. The tough talk, the defiant toasts, it was all just noise. In the silence of my own head, there was only one devastatingly clear thought. I had a good man, and I broke him on purpose just to prove I could. And now he's gone.